On Borderlines, we go beyond boundaries.
You know, let's be honest here. This is an organization that sent nearly 3,000 terrorists to Israel, and on the most part, they were proud. They don't care if they die. All they care about is killing Israelis and killing Jews.
Why is it that the Palestinians cannot go by dialoguing with these people through other international bodies?
Straight talk, no holds barred.
That's what Hamas did, and Hamas say they didn't do it, but Hamas lied.
You contradict what America's report, you contradict Israel's report.
The Liberation Organization died. The children, they will rise up tomorrow and fight for liberty.
Biggest conversations from around the world. Borderlines with Ireti Bakare-Yusuf. Fridays at 4 p.m. Let's talk.
And welcome to Borderlines, Lagos, Nigeria, wherever you are listening from. My name is Ireti Bakare-Yusuf. My guest on Borderlines today is a senior colleague. That's what I will call him, a senior colleague, and it's an absolute pleasure. So I'm a bit nervous because when you speak to senior colleagues, when you interview senior colleagues, like they can literally correct you and you're like, oh my God, am I doing it right? So yes, you guys don't often hear me nervous, but I am nervous because why shouldn't I be? He's like mega award winning. He's an author. He shakes tables. He literally probes the conscience of government whenever, wherever he can. And, you know, he doesn't know what this means, but in Nigeria, he's somebody I would call an egbon, right? An egbon, Mr. Gideon Levy, means an older brother. Welcome to Borderlines, to Nigerian radio.
It's really my pleasure. Don't be nervous. And I'm not a senior and for sure not an old journalist. I'm just an equal colleague.
Well, thank you for that. Well, you're very kind. So I'll accept it as that. Let me give Lagos, Nigeria, and we have lots of people listening from abroad, just an outline of who you are. Okay. Gideon Levy is a journalist and an author, as I said earlier. He writes opinion pieces for Haaretz. And you guys, some of you regular listeners, would have heard me make reference to certain things on Haaretz. Sometimes when I interview some of our other guests. Okay. Gideon was born in Tel Aviv, but Gideon's grandparents actually were killed in the Holocaust. Okay. His father escaped to Mandate Palestine, and I'm going to ask him to tell us about that because it's quite an interesting one, how he got to Mandate Palestine. By the way, Mandate Palestine, you people, we've been teaching you about the history of Israel, Palestine. You must know Mandate Palestine was between 1920 to 1948 till the state of Israel was declared. So Gideon has written loads and loads of sort of opinion pieces. He's written books. You've seen him on Al Jazeera. You would have seen him on other TV stations. He's called upon not just for his opinion all the time, but most importantly for his knowledge. So, Mr. Gideon Levy, welcome again.
Thank you so much for having me. Really, I'm really excited. It's my first interview ever in Nigeria.
Oh, so we have, you see, Lagos, Nigeria. This is an exclusive. All right. I'm smiling from ear to ear. You must be watching us on YouTube because we're streaming live on YouTube, on Facebook. And as usual, you will be able to call in as soon as possible. Mr. Levy, there's a piece that you wrote just yesterday, I think it was. And that particular piece is what I'm going to call you on. We're going to start with that. You said, nobody stood up. So far, as far as is known, not even one case of disobedience has been registered in the IDF since the war broke out, except for one young man before his recruitment. Israel must stop abusing and humiliating Palestinian prisoners. An artillery shell signed by Israelis president could have hit a child in Gaza. You went on to say, hold on. You went on, sorry, I've lost my page now. Here we go. You went on to say, an artillery shell signed by Israel's president could have hit a child in Gaza. The pilot bombs as they have never been bombed before. The drone operators kill by remote control in wholesale quantities never known before. The artillery men shell more than ever. The heavy engineering equipment operators destroy as they have never destroyed before. And even the open prison guards abuse prisoners they've never abused before. And nobody stood up. Tell us, what was going through your mind? Because obviously that sounded very, very angry and annoyed.
Absolutely, and that's my mood right now, because Israel has a history of launching wars. Some of them were justified, some of them were totally unnecessary, but there was always some kind of critique about the wars from within Israel, for sure in later stages, because in the beginning everyone is enthusiastic about the war. This will bring us security and peace. But when the war goes on, reality is exposed, and then we realize that neither security nor peace will come out of wars, because wars never succeed. And there are never really winners in wars, only losers. But this war is so different from all the other wars that Israel had launched, quite some dozens, namely that it is the first war in which there is no critic, no resistance, and above all, no soldiers who refuse to serve. You know, in all the other wars, there were very small figures, but still there were pilots who were not ready to bombard children and families and heavily populated neighborhoods. There were still some soldiers who say, no, I will not take part in this crime. And this time, nothing. And this makes me very frustrated and very sad, because it shows how Israel is deteriorating domestically.
Indeed, you talk about the lack of disobedience being the big issue in itself, and also being sort of evidence of the indoctrination that's going on. You talked about the fact that there had been disobedience before October 7th, and that disobedience has since gone away. Tell us about the disobedience before October 7th.
We had a whole wave in the last year, unprecedented, of pilots and soldiers who threatened not to come to the trainings because of what's called the legal reform or the legal revolution in Israel, which was quite dramatic. But then they were ready to pay the price, to refuse, not to come to trainings, not to come to serve. And now what do I say? They say that a legal reform is more of a reason not to serve rather than a massacre. That's quite terrible.
Indeed. In your early career, you worked for Shimon Peres. And I remember seeing not an interview, it was a discussion. I think it was in Westminster in London with Ilan Pape, who we've also had on this show, where you said, I can't remember the exact quote, but you said something about you didn't think there was anything worse than working for Shimon Peres. Why was that? Of course, Shimon Peres was, the Israeli prime minister, and he became president, and he was also known as protege to Ben Gurion. Lagos, Nigeria, those of you who don't know Ben Gurion was known as one of the fathers of Zionism. Could that have had anything to do with why you didn't like working for Shimon Peres?
No, first of all, I did like certain things, and I did it for 4 years, and it gave me a lot. The only problem is that I was then very, very young, even younger than you. I was 26 then, but I was so naive to believe that those politicians really mean what they say, and really mean to create some kind of equality between us and the Palestinians. And throughout time, I realized that none of them, including not Shimon Peres, had the slightest intention to treat the Palestinians as equal human beings like us. They made some courageous offers for peace, but they were lacking one thing. They were lacking watching them as equal human beings with equal rights. We never said so. And therefore, it was a big disappointment to realize that even the man of peace of Israel, as the Nobel Prize, Peace Nobel Prize winner, finally, when it got to really putting an end to the occupation, putting an end to the apartheid, he offered minor offers, partial offers. None of them can bring justice.
I was in Israel not so long ago. I wasn't in Israel for fun. I was invited by the Israeli Foreign Affairs as a journalist to come and see things, what happened on the 7th of the 10th ourselves, and for us to be able to report on it. I'd like to take you back to October 7th last year, 2023. Where were you when you heard what was happening, and what were your immediate response and thoughts?
Yeah, that's a nice question, because I was jogging like every morning, early in the morning at 6 o'clock in the park. And nothing told me that something is going to happen. At 6:30, while jogging, I heard horrible booms in the sky and a siren. Now, we had it in the past, but now it was really out of the blue. I continued to jog. There was another siren, but still I thought maybe it's, just two sirens and nothing is happening. I went home, and then, as usual, I went to the swimming pool. In the swimming pool, they rushed me to get out quickly, because they heard that there are some hostages in the south and it's going to become a war. So I was the last one to leave the swimming pool, which was then closed for a few weeks. And then I came home and I saw the most amazing video I've ever seen in my life. Two pickup cars of Hamas fighters in the middle of Sderot, which is a Jewish Israeli town in the south, not far from the border. It looks to be so weird. I mean, how did they get there? I know we have this huge barrier between Gaza and Israel. We spent so much money in building this barrier. How did they make it to Sderot? And then someone told me, listen, it is much more serious, the neighbors, much more serious than you think. There are 100,000 hostages. And within few hours, the 100,000 hostages became few hundreds. The very few killed became 1,200 killed people. And there started this whole unbelievable journey ever since then, into which nothing was expected. We were first all in shock. Then we were humiliated. Most of Israelis were very humiliated. And then started the process which led us until today with this horrible, horrible massacre in Gaza.
You have once said, when you described Hamas, I think it was in 2010, there had been an Hamas attack on Israel. And you said, we have to ask, why did Hamas attack? Again, the same question applies to October 7th, although many people resent it. I'm asking you now, why do you think Hamas attacked on October the 7th?
Not only resent it, but also are not ready to accept this question at all. They see it as an illegitimate question because they think that in asking why, you legitimize the attack. So I don't legitimize anything. This attack, I was in the kibbutzim, in the towns that were attacked 2 days on Monday It took place on Saturday. Monday I was there, and I thought the most devastating scenes that I've ever seen. It was horrible, and nobody can justify it. And still you have always to ask, why do they do it? You have your Boko Haram, and we have our own Hamas, but still there is a difference. Because Boko Haram is a fundamentalistic organization who, as far as I know, wants to implement Islam everywhere. Hamas is also a fundamentalistic organization, but its first course, I believe, is still liberating Palestine, liberating Gaza. And your listeners should know, I'm sure they know, that Gaza is the biggest cage in the world for the last 17 years. It is a prison under Israeli siege, Israeli and Egyptian siege. Almost nobody can get in, almost nobody can get out. There's a total control on the products that get in and out. And this is in many ways an experiment in human behavior. Because if you think that if you lock 2.3 million people in a cage, you will get all kind of charity groups and not violent and dangerous terror organizations, you are wrong. You see, terror was always the weapon of the weak ones. I can assure you that the Hamas would love to have jets and just put the bottom and send rockets. I'm sure they would love to be more precise in their hittings, but they are under siege. And their fight, first of all, for liberating Gaza, and secondly, also for very fundamentalistic Islamic cause, which I cannot be part of it, and I totally don't agree to them because they are anti-democratic, they are fascist in a way. But finally, you have to ask yourself, what did you expect when you put 2.3 million people in a cage?
Indeed, a question. Oh, my technical people are asking if you could, that when you sit back, they're not able to capture you on camera. I guess they want to
sorry,
see.
Sorry.
I guess they would like
I
to
thought
see
we are on radio. I'm sorry.
We are on radio, but we're streaming live. We're streaming live
Sure,
on...
sorry.
We're
Sorry, I will not move from now. I will not move and even not breathe.
Indeed. I want to come to... where is this quote? There's a quote, something you talked about. Yeah, you said... When I first started covering the West Bank for Haaretz, I was young and brainwashed. I would see settlers cutting down olive trees and soldiers mistreating Palestinian women at the checkpoints, and I would think, these are exceptions, not part of government policy. It took me a long time to see that these were exceptions. These were not exceptions. They were the substance of government policy. As somebody who has worked for government before, there's so much we still need to get to. But how much do you believe the people of Israel, having been brainwashed with that indoctrination, can impact government policy? The sort of policy that's fundamentally based on apartheid, ethnic cleansing, assault, violation of human rights, etc. How much responsibility do you think the Israeli people or the citizens of Israel can indeed influence the government's policy?
They surely can, first of all in elections, but not only. I think you see the polls now. There's a big majority of Israelis who support this war, a huge majority. And I can give you from our days the way that their brain is being washed. You know that in Israel in the last 3 months, you hardly see images from Gaza on TV and in the newspapers. They don't show it. Not because someone told them not to show it. By all means not. They are free. They are commercials. They do it because they don't want to bother the Israelis who don't want to see what we are doing. That's a kind of brainwash. Not to show the full reality, the full truth, is a brainwash. To prevent your viewers and readers of seeing what your own troops are doing, the crimes that they are committing, the killing, the destruction in the most unlimited way. This is brainwash. But brainwash goes also to the beginning, to the establishing of the state. We were told from the moment we started to understand anything. I was brought up in Israel in the 50s, and we were always told that we are the good ones and the Arabs are the bad ones, that they only want to push us to the ocean, that this land belongs to us, that the Jewish people arrived in people without land arrived in a land without people, all kind of lies. That we were very few and weak and they were very strong. We were the Davids, they were the Goliaths. That Israel always wanted peace and they wanted war. And you get it through the education system, through the media, and you are influenced, you are brainwashed. You know, Israel in 48 had evacuated, expelled, and destroyed over 400 Palestinian villages and totally destroyed them and covered them up with forests. I was never told about it. I saw here and there ruins of Palestinian houses in Israel. I never bothered to ask myself, where are the owners of those homes, of those beautiful buildings, of those ruins? Where are they? Where are they living? What happened to them? Never bothered. All those things, you are really being taught not to ask questions, to accept the axioma that your people is the right one, the chosen one, and that you are fighting a very cruel enemy. And in this battle, it's either them or us. They were born to kill, and we were born for peace. Such a set of lies, but all of us grow up with them.
Indeed, you've called, I think you on that same conversation with you and Ilan, I think you called it the most aggressive regime, the most cruel and criminal regime on earth. That's what you called Israel.
No, this I don't think I called it. I don't think that Israel is the most cruel regime. There are some more cruel regime, but it's for sure the most cruel regime in the West.
In the West.
I wouldn't make a comparison. Is North Korea a more cruel regime or not? Are certain regimes in Africa in the past, were they more cruel or not? Was colonialism more cruel? I don't get into this. I never said that's the most cruel regime in the world. No. I just think that the regime in the occupied territories is one of the most cruel tyrannies in the world today.
Right.
And the way that we treat Palestinians, I can't think about many other regimes that treat their inhabitants in the same way for so many years.
Indeed. There's a voice note I'd like to hear. We tried to get it on the system, but we couldn't. Is by Hamed Al-Nouk, who I think you know, the founder of We Are Not Numbers. And he said this a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to play it. We're going to play it via the mic so the people can hear it.
Made the bomb and the media enabled them. They gave them the cover to do as many atrocities as they desire. I just can't fathom the fact that there are already 6,000 Palestinian children killed. My nieces and nephews were cut into pieces. Their body parts were everywhere, mixed with the stones and the rocks of my family's house. And we're seeing the politicians, the journalists, turning a blind eye. Some people actually commented, Hamas killed your family, blame Hamas. But we know who killed our families. We know who these F-16 belong to. We know our killers. We know our murderers. And we will never forgive them. The kind of retaliation that Israel is doing in Gaza amounts to war crimes. Bombing hospitals, bombing schools, bombing mosques, bombing churches, bombing refugee camps. And yes, you covered what happened on the 7th of October. Good for you. Now cover what Israel is doing to Gaza. They don't. They don't think of us as equally human beings. Palestinians die, Israelis killed. Palestinians are terrorists, Israeli army, no. Although if you compare and contrast between the casualties of the Palestinians and the Israelis, when it comes to the civilians, the number of Palestinians would be 100 times higher. When the media cares about 40 beheaded babies, fake news, and then people get this first impression, they keep this first impression, and then the first impression in media always lasts forever. They did the same thing with the bombing of the hospital. They said, no, it's a Palestinian missile. Oh, come on, do you think we're stupid? It landed on the right place, on the right time, of the hospital that you already warned to evacuate. But the media would pick up that, and that would be the first impression. The Palestinians killed themselves, and then now they came up with another lie. A baby baked in an oven. Come on. And then a few days later, they said, no, actually, this is not actually true. And the media always repeats these lies. And with these lies, they are creating the cover for Israel. At the same time, Israel is doing all of that on us. They are literally killing us live on the news every day. And thousands of people are being killed. Thousands of children are being murdered and massacred. And we're screaming to the media, please cover that, talk about it. And they just don't.
I am sorry to say that your mass media, the Western mass media, always beside the Israelis. Your baby in this area.
Okay, that was Ahmed. It actually starts with he blames the Western media for killing his family. I think he lost 23 members of his family. One child is remaining, called Omar. I think Omar is either 3 or 5 years old. What do you make of the Western media's reporting of this war, this conflict, this genocide, whatever you'd like to call it?
With all the empathy, I don't think that the Western media is the problem. I think the Western governments are the problem. And if to go domestically, the Israeli media is the problem. Because the Western media, I just watch international networks, and I must tell you, even CNN showed this time amazing footage, Al Jazeera English for sure, Sky News, and BBC. So I don't think the problem is the Western media. I think the problem is, on one hand, the Israeli media, which shows nothing, and on the other hand, the growing gap between Western public opinions and Western governments. Because the Western public opinion are very strong now. You see the demonstrations all over Europe. Solidarity with Palestinians, solidarity with Gaza. From the sea, from the river to the sea, Palestine is free. You hear it in many places, especially in the United States, and this is based on what they see in the media. The problem is that the governments totally support Israel in an unconditional way.